Welcome. My name is Molly, and I'm a counselor from Independence House. I've worked with this agency for about 5 years as a counselor and advocate for adults, teens, and kids who are survivors of both domestic and sexual violence. So Independence House has prepared 5 short workshops on sexual violence and individuals with both intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our first presentation is going to be on healthy relationships, which is an overview of different aspects of a healthy relationship, which can include talking about things like boundaries, consent, disclosure, what to do when you feel like your boundaries are violated, aspects of healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationships, etc. So this PowerPoint is going to be an overview, and the following PowerPoints are going to be in more detail on those subjects. So some of this information you already know. Some of it is repetitive as well. So the main goal is to provide the language around talking about healthy relationships for you to use with both your coworkers and those who we work with and serve, as well as just in your general day-to-day lives. So there's no particular order that you need to view these PowerPoints after this first overview one of healthy relationships. So feel free to look through them in any order that you would like. And thank you so much, and we will get started. So Independence House is Cape Cod's leading resource, counseling, and advocacy center that addresses and prevents both domestic and sexual violence. Our main office is 160 Bassett Lane in Hyannis. We do have additional offices throughout the Cape. We have one in downtown Falmouth, one in Orleans, and one in Provincetown. All of them are walk-in welcomes, except for Provincetown is by appointment only. Our main telephone number is the 508-771-6507. We also have access to our translation or TTY line, which is also named here. We also have a teen text line that is available for teenagers to utilize anonymously if they're interested in connecting with a counselor over text, because sometimes it's easier than a phone call for teenagers. We also provide an online teen chat, which is accessible via both our main website, which is independencehouse.org, and our teen-specific website, which is ihteens.org. Also wanted to provide some information for CORD. So CORD is the Cape Organization for the Rights of the Disabled. Their office is located at 765 Addicks Lane in Hyannis. Their telephone number and translation line is 508-775-8300, and then there's their email and website information as well. So the first thing that we're going to go over is talking about some of the things and takeaways that you'll get from this PowerPoint, some of the objectives. So after this PowerPoint, you'll leave feeling confident in your ability to provide not only yourself, but others with the tools in order to advocate for healthy relationships. Individuals will also be able to differentiate between healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationships and behaviors. You'll also be able to identify and recognize red flags that are associated with unhealthy and abusive relationships. And you'll also be able to recognize and have more streamlined language in regards to discussing relationships and the spectrums of relationships. We're going to go over a few important definitions. The first definition I want to address is the definition of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive and controlling behaviors that one individual uses over another to gain power and control. Domestic violence is not just physical violence. While we mostly think of it as physical violence, there is a broad spectrum where domestic violence can occur. It can look like physical abuse, it can look like mental abuse, verbal, emotional, and financial. Some examples of those, financial abuse is one that's not thought of very often, but what it can look like is a family member or significant other withholding money, bank information, controlling money or bank information. What verbal domestic violence or abuse could look like is calling someone names, degrading them, making them feel worthless, isolating them from family and friends. So it doesn't just look physical. On top of domestic violence, there's also sexual violence. So sexual violence also involves an individual controlling and taking power over someone else, but it also includes any sexual act without consent. And that also includes any exploitative or coercive sexual contact without consent as well. Some more important definitions to go over are in regards to personal boundaries. So what a boundary is it's a guideline, rule, or limit that an individual can create to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave towards them and around them. It also includes how one responds when someone violates their boundaries or violates their consent or disrespects their limits. Now, consent is giving permission for something to happen or agreeing that something is going to happen. With this said, both personal boundaries and consent does not just include physical boundaries and consent. Consent goes so much further. Consent, for example, could be consenting to get into someone's car with them, or consenting to work on a project with them, or even consenting to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be involving your physical body. Some more important definitions are disclosure. So disclosure is the act of making new or secret information known. Self-care is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own physical, spiritual, and or mental health. A lot of people, when they think of self-care, think of, again, just physical self-care, but it goes far beyond that. Our spiritual, mental, and emotional self-care are just as important as physical. Some examples of that are being able to take time to practice mindfulness, having a good social life, being involved in the community, having hobbies, which also include taking care of yourself physically, but also that mental and spiritual part of it too. Trauma-informed care is an approach in the human service field that assumes that an individual is more likely than not to have a history of trauma. It also recognizes that the presence of trauma symptoms could be there and acknowledges how those symptoms, as well as the trauma itself, plays a role in an individual's life. Now, this doesn't just include those people who you serve or work for. It can include people who you work with. So fellow staff members, employees, those who you're surrounded by. It's kind of important to frame all of your work and all of your conversations around trauma-informed care. So being really empathetic, compassionate, patient, because you never know where someone's coming from or what someone has experienced or what their story is. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about some fast facts and some statistics for you. This is in regards to the general population. So about every 68 seconds, an individual in the United States is sexually assaulted. Around 25% of men in the United States experienced some form of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. And for rape survivors, 9 out of 10 of survivors of rape are female. And in terms of false reporting frequency is very low. So between 2 and 10% of reports of sexual assault has been false. Some fast facts that are specific to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, otherwise known as IDD. So people with IDD experience sexual assault at a rate 7 times higher than the general population. Most survivors with IDD are assaulted multiple times as well. So 50% of individuals will be assaulted more than 10 times. And 40% of these assaults actually do happen during the daytime. While we're talking about relationships, it's important to be able to talk about those less common types of relationships that we think about. So a lot of the times when you think of the word relationship, you think of a significant other or a romantic relationship, or your relationship with your parents, siblings, cousins, grandparents, those two types of relationships. However, we have a lot of different types of relationships in our lives. Some that we may not think about all the times could be group members or teammates, schoolmates, classmates, acquaintances, or strangers, like at the grocery store or at the gas station, staff or paid supporters or fellow employees or supervisors, or all those kind of dynamics that you have in the workplace as well. So it doesn't just mean friends, family, and romantic partners. Okay, so here is a chart that shows different kind of examples of what a healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationship can look like. So really what we should all strive for is having healthy relationships in our lives. So all relationships, whether it's romantic or not, should have aspects of healthy relationships. That includes communicating, being respectful, honesty, equality, fairness, enjoyment, all those things that kind of fall under the healthy relationship column is what we should strive for. Now, with that said, we're human. We're not all perfect. We make mistakes. So some of our relationships will have aspects of unhealthy relationships. With that said, that does not necessarily mean that every single relationship is going to be abusive. There is gray area between unhealthy and abusive, but really in that abusive column are signs that whatever relationship you're in is not good and a little bit worse than unhealthy. As we're talking about healthy relationships and aspects of healthy relationships, consent, which we will go into more detail in a different PowerPoint, is really important to talk about. So we kind of wanted to provide information as to why talking about this is so important. So really, first and foremost, we want to talk about consent to help promote a sense of physical and emotional empowerment, physical and emotional safety, bodily autonomy, also to help not only avoid sexual exploitation, but to help raise awareness about sexual exploitation, helping people understand personal and physical boundaries, as well as their values around those boundaries, helping people understand the importance of communication during not only sexual activity, but really any activity that you engage with anyone in any type of relationship. And without consent, any sexual activity is rape and or sexual assault. So something that you will see a couple of times throughout our workshops here is what we call consent FRIES. So FRIES stands for freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So we'll go into a little bit more of what they each mean. So when someone gives consent, there needs to be each part of this for it to be able to be consent. So what I mean is when someone gives consent, in terms of freely given, both individuals do not feel pressured, guilted, coerced, into doing anything that they don't want to do. This also includes them being conscious and not intoxicated. So people involved in the action of whatever it is needs to be aware and to feel as though they are not pressured into doing anything. Reversible. So what reversible means is that either participant can change their mind at any time. So say you say yes to one thing 1 minute and change your mind the next, that is okay. Consent is ongoing and it can change at any time, or someone can take back what they consented to at any time. It's important for that other person to be respectful of that and to stop when someone says that they've changed their mind. Informed. So all individuals should be on the same page in regards to what is actually going to happen, whether that's a sexual act or a non-sexual act. Everyone should kind of know and be on the same page of what's going to happen and what that's going to look like before actually being involved in the act. Enthusiastic, kind of straightforward, but really all individuals should be willing, wanting to, looking forward to doing whatever they're going to do. Again, whether that's being involved in a sexual act or just something like going on a date or hanging out or doing a project together. And then specific. So what we mean by this is that, so for example, saying yes to one thing does not mean saying yes to another. In terms of sexual acts, specific example could be if someone says yes to kissing, that does not mean saying yes to any other sexual acts going forward after that. There has to be ongoing consent to each and every act that happens. So again, you'll be seeing consent phrase a couple of times, but just a little overview of what that looks like. So as we talk about consent, it's also important to talk about what we can do to help ourselves and others feel as safe as possible when our consent is violated or when our boundaries are violated or disrespected. So here are some 3 main steps that may seem a little bit straightforward, but when you're in a moment of feeling stressed or violated, maybe you won't necessarily remember these. So it's always good to kind of review and to practice these steps. So the first step, tell whoever it is who's violating or disrespecting you no and stop very loudly, even if it's someone of authority. So even if it's a parent or a teacher or a supervisor or a boss, if someone's disrespecting you or your body, you have a right to tell them no and to tell them stop. We say no is a loving word because no means that you're taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do. Now, at the same time, as you say no or stop, scream or make as much noise as you can so people around you can kind of pick up on what's going on and hopefully step in and help. And then the third step is to get away, as far away as that person who's disrespecting you as possible, and then go tell someone that you trust or someone that can help you. So that was, again, an overview of what we're going to be going into more depth with our other workshops. But we wanted to end with providing you some national resources for survivors. So that first one, the National Sexual Assault Hotline with the 1-800 number. There's also what we call RAINN, or Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. On their website, they also provide an online chat service, which has a supportive specialist who's specifically trained to respond in a trauma-informed way with respect, patience, and understanding. And then there's the National Disabilities Rights Network, or otherwise known as NDRN. So they have their website there, but also NDRN members investigate reports of abuse and neglect, as well as seeking systematic change to prevent any further incidences. They also advocate for basic rights, and they advocate for basic rights in terms of healthcare, education, employment, housing, transportation, as well as both the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to going into more depth in our other workshops with you.